So I've been a teacher maybe about 4 school years now. But yeah, I started teaching after the pandemic, and my students tend to buck at me sometimes when I tell them to stop playing in my hallway, stop playing in my cafeteria. Y'all gonna act this way in my school. My school has discipline. And a lot of times they'll say, this your school, you ain't pay for it. And they don't understand the concept. So that's a teaching opportunity for me that allows me to explain to them the concept behind why I take ownership of every single place that I be. First and foremost, if you ask my children, when I ask them who world is this, they look me in the eye and say it's our world. And I ask them whose responsibility is it? And then they say it's ours. And it's a reason for that. My dad instilled in me that we have to be leaders in every single place that we are blessed to be. And if we don't take ownership of the place that we are, bad things are gonna happen to it and to us. And that's gonna be our fault, our responsibility. And a lot of people disagree with that, and I understand that. Those people who disagree with that were made to be leaders. But in my classrooms, in my spaces, I expect everybody to be a leader. Rule number 7, always be a leader. So quick story time. My dad used to work at this college in East Texas, and he would get off at 5 o'clock. He'd get off at 5 o'clock, come to my grandmother's house, pick me up. I believe Little League football practice started at 6 o'clock, 6:30. So it's taking about 40 to 45 minutes to get to my grandmother's house and another 10 minutes to get to practice. And he did this every day for 4 or 5 decades, which is crazy. Not every day, because obviously I didn't stay a little kid for that long, but you understand what I mean. When he picked me up from my grandmother's house, I ride to practice with him. I'm in 6th grade at the time, so it's just me. My big brother is in football practice at his middle school. And I remember this day, my dad driving into his parking space that he always parked in, and his teacher is walking towards his truck before he can park. So I'm like, that's strange. So as soon as he parked and opened the door, the teacher starts to tell him that a window was broke out in the elementary school. The elementary school was Jody McClear. If you know anything about Longview football, Jody McClear Mustangs is probably the most respected team in Longview for various reasons. We can get to that another time. But a window was broke out in the school. The teacher told my dad, I remember this like it was yesterday, a window was broke out. We know your players didn't do it, but they were over there when it happened, and they won't tell us who did it. So my dad heard that, and he was like, He looked at the 2 players, called them over. He said, who broke the window out in the school? They was like, oh, we don't know, coach. My daddy said, so y'all was over there when it happened, but y'all didn't see nothing. He said, no, sir, we don't know who broke it out in the school. My daddy said, y'all see Larry, Carey, and Mo? So Larry, Carey, and Mo on our practice field was these light poles. They were about 40 yards away from each other. So from Larry to Carey, it was 40 yards. From Carey to Mo was 40 yards. And it was at the bottom of our practice field. So it was a little hill going down to Larry, Carey, and Mo. And then you got to come back up the hill to the practice. My daddy said, hit Larry, Carey, and Mo and around this field. Since y'all can't remember or don't know who did it, y'all do that until you can jog your memory about what happened. Every time you hear this whistle, you hit your belly. He sent them on their way. So I'm shaking my head. I'm like, dang, that's crazy. And I'm just sitting here waiting. My dad go back to talking to the teacher. I'm standing about 10 feet away from him, just waiting, just giving them their privacy or whatever. My dad stops in mid-sentence and looks at me, and he says, what you waiting on? I'm looking confused. I'm like, I'm waiting for you. And I'm trying to explain to him, I'm waiting for you to get finished talking. Before I can get that out of my mouth, he screams at me, go! He sit me behind those kids. Now, my dad knows. He picked me up from my grandmother's house. I rode to practice with him. He knows I wasn't over there and had nothing to do with it. But because I'm a part of this team and a part of this community, he sent me behind those other 2 players who did not want to snitch on who broke out the window in the school. Every single car that showed up, they hopped out their parents' car and was sent right behind the rest of us. And we did that, ran around the field belly flopping for about 30 to 40 minutes straight. Nobody knew what was going on. All they know was the whole team is belly flopping around this field and they're confused. So about 40 minutes go by, my dad stops it and he calls all the players up to a huddle and he preaches to us about the importance of taking care of your community. Because if we don't take care of our community, nobody's gonna take care of it. Nobody's gonna respect it, and there's gonna be havoc everywhere. So if something is going wrong in our community, it's our job to step up and do something about it. Because when you don't do something about it, it ends up affecting everybody. When I tell you my dad is a mad scientist, that man is brilliant. Because that story stuck with me for the rest of my life. Because somebody broke out the window to the school that wasn't a player. 2 players was there and they did not defend their school. They sit there and let somebody break out the window of the school and didn't want to tell them. So those 2 acts impacted everybody on that team. Fast forward 2 or 3 decades. A lot of violence was going on in the city of Longview. I'm from Longview, Texas. It's a lot of murders, a lot of uneasiness. And then I looked up, there were certain men in the community who were doing things to promote peace and positivity. And I'm thinking like, I know these guys, and I'm like, oh, that's dope. And then I started looking at them. He played for the Mustangs, he played for the... Everybody who I seen who was doing something to positively impact the community all played for the Mustangs. Which led me to believe that what you teach kids at a very young age, it sticks with them. These are the people. It's important for us to teach our kids to respect where they are. So a lot of kids in my last school that I worked at, I would always say, stop playing in my hallway. Y'all gonna behave in my cafeteria. It was a young man who kept asking me about this and kept trying to challenge me about, I don't own this school or whatever. And I would always check him very sternly. It's my school and you're gonna behave in it. So I come into school late one day because my kids had an appointment, and I see him sweeping up the cafeteria. And he said, hey, I'm sweeping up my cafeteria. I'm like, it's finally getting to him. He understands that he got to take responsibility over his space. And once you start taking ownership of certain things, things change. It's not going to be okay if you got trash on the floor. Originally, you was like, oh, yeah, somebody else got to pick it up. But now it's trash on your floor. You don't want trash on your floor. So now when you see somebody littering, it personally affects you because they're littering your floor. Oh, no, y'all going to have to do something about that. I'm not going to tolerate this type of behavior. So now we're taking ownership and taking accountability of our personal space. And if we can learn how to do that as a community, we wouldn't have police brutality issues because the police would know they have to be accountable to the community. If we violate these people in this community, the whole community gonna stand up. People know that, oh, drug dealers can't come on this block and start selling drugs because it could be just this person buying. But now this person is broke because they spent all their money on drugs. A drug user ain't gonna stop using because they broke. What they gotta do now? Steal. So now if we allow you to sell drugs on our block, you gonna screw up all the people on our block. They're gonna start stealing. So it's gonna impact this whole community. And after impact this whole community, the police gonna be hot over here. So they over here hot because you selling drugs, but I'm getting random parking tickets. You parking on the wrong side of the road. The police presence is heightened in this community because these people over here selling drugs. This is a domino effect. If you don't stand up, other people are going to stand up for you, and it's going to be a bad day for everybody. So that's the reason why it's important to take ownership of your space. That's the reason why I take ownership and I say, this is my city. This is my block. This is my classroom. Because once you take ownership, you take better care of your stuff.